Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Living Astrology with Janet Hickox. Grab your cup of coffee or your tea, sit back, and let's chat about what is happening up in the sky above us today. It is Thursday, July 9th, and it looks a little bit more like October here in my part of the neighborhood. And I'm not sure why that won't stay quiet for me, but it doesn't. So anyway, it is definitely one of those dreamy, quiet, creative kind of days, even a little sleepy if you're just getting up here on the West Coast, getting ready for your day. It is kind of a quiet one. And do I think that the rest of the day will be this quiet? I am relatively sure that it won't be. I'm expecting that the news cycle might produce some shakeups, some things that we are not expecting perhaps. Personally, though, does that mean that there's something crazy in your own life? It's a possibility today, but I think a lot of the energy today is putting us into a more peaceful state, or at least the need for more quiet time, maybe some naps, maybe some, just fun sort of creative things that you can be doing. Although when we look at the Pleiadian-Earth energy of the day, it is 5 evolving, which in the Mayan calendar was Caban. And Caban was a sign that represented earthquakes, like it was a symbol of the earth shaking. So of something earth shaking happening, not necessarily an earthquake, but certainly something that can cause a shift in the energy. So you'll notice in the title I chose this morning, it was about peace and quiet. It was about dreaminess and shifting. So what we might be seeing is sort of a split in the day, not because of the moon. The moon spends the entire day in the sign of Pisces today, but because some of the other energies out there in terms of the evolution of our consciousness are creating a little bit of a shake here, a little bit of a wake up, get the coffee kind of day. So let's say good morning. Good morning to Joshua and Kimberly. Great to see you guys. Marcella, hello, and thank you for joining us. J-Lo, good morning to you. Debbie Tippett-Tumiel, good morning. Jennifer Peachy, Allison, Joshua says, all my friends too. Everybody's here. Deborah Johnson, good morning to you. Debbie says, there was a small quake in LA a few moments ago, a 3.6 rattle. Wow. Ursula, good morning to you, sweetie. And Deborah Johnson says, hi, Janet. I sent you an email to book a solar return reading. Wow, I didn't get that, Debbie or Deborah, unless it's something that you sent just this morning. Nope, I don't see it yet, but I will check on that for you in a bit. Augustina, good morning. And J-Lo says, yes, Debbie. So, hopefully that 3.6 isn't, something that is a precursor to something bigger. But, on the West Coast here, at least, we're sort of used to shakes, right? The shakes. I remember being very young. I grew up in Southern California, so I grew up with earthquakes, and they scared the bejeebs out of me. And I still don't like them. So I've managed to live in Washington where we don't have that many, not like LA where you can almost expect that you're going to have some all the time. But here we do have them, but I've not felt any one of them since I've lived here, which is kind of funny. We even had a 6.8 a few years ago, and I was on the road driving, and I only knew there was an earthquake because on the news, the radio, the news people were saying, everybody get under your desks, that we're having an earthquake. And I was like, what? Really? Never felt it, never noticed it. It was, 6.8 is a pretty good jolt. And yeah, no. And then often there's some off of Vancouver Island, which is not that far from me, and I don't feel them either. So thank you, God or source, for preventing me from feeling those major shakes, because I feel so dizzy during that time. Like I would almost, it's almost like my body is shaking inwardly with the earthquake, and it's so distortioning or disturbing to my peace. I don't need that. And it distorts. That's where I was going with that. It distorts my vision, my hearing, everything kind of goes off kilter with that. So, and I don't know if other people experience that during an earthquake, but I end up feeling very not stable during that period of time. And of course, the Earth is not stable during that period of time either. So what do we have this morning? You know, luckily today we have not a huge astrological day. So I'm gonna do some reading today for you out of the Gene Keys book. And the reason I'm doing that rather than doing my own conversation is because I don't think I could say it any better than what Richard Rudd does in the book. And I think it really goes to the heart of where we are right now with the sun at the gate 53 and this need for humanity to become more mature. And remember, the shadow in the gate 53 is immaturity. And from that immaturity, we move on up into states of being that really take more responsibility. And actually, I should give you the actual term: expansion is the gift, and superabundance is the siddhi. So, what does that mean for us? How do we move from where we think we are in lack to superabundance? Because when we're looking at the gene keys, these are the natural states of being for us as humans here on the planet. And I want that natural state of being. So I thought there was some really interesting things that we could read in the book that might clear that up for us a bit. Hello, Terry. It's good to know that you're out there. We felt the aftershock in New York from one in Virginia once. I thought it was my daughter that was shaking next to me. I don't know, that's a weird feeling to have one in a place where you're not used to having them. So it comes from, you know, an unexpected place. Destiny, I'll never forget those disastrous earthquakes that happened in Napa. I shot straight up from a deep sleep because my equilibrium was going wild right before the quake. It was insane. Yeah, it's almost like you tap in, right? You just know, ooh, something's going on. It's like animals who what was that? The big tsunami and earthquake that occurred in Sumatra, Indonesia. When was that? 2004, 2005, with the major tsunami, right? That, you know, animals went to the hills around the area and before the tsunami, before the earthquake. So we do have this instinctual, maybe it's that, you know, in our ears, the crystals in our ears that may be reverberating with sound that we don't hear necessarily, that alerts us that something is on its way. So anyway, Amy, no, you're not too late. I have not started. I'm sort of just lazing around talking about different things right now. Ursula, I love the gene keys too, and am part of a small group called the Delta. Yes, the Delta. I've thought about joining up in a Delta group, and I just never seem to be able to find enough time to focus on that. And yeah, you meet for 8 weeks and support one another's learning. It's very deep, and I would say a very worthy event for you to participate in. Joshua, talking to Amy. Destiny says yes. Okay, let's go into then what we're looking at for the day. Of course, the moon is in Pisces. Today it is squaring Venus, and by all accounts, a square to Venus always makes the possibility for a few little bumps along the way, but it certainly isn't a major shakeup. But we also have the moon in a sextile to Uranus, which does potentially lead us to some shakeups, and a trine to the sun. So as I wrote in the title for the show today, it's a sleepy, creative, dreamy kind of day, but I can't discount that there are some shifting patterns that are occurring, maybe underneath the surface that aren't quite apparent yet. And some news maybe, or some events that can rattle our reverie, right? That kind of shake us up a little bit. And I was shaken a bit this morning as I first read an article about the possibility that the coronavirus has aerosolized and then can be passed through vapor in the air. So it's moving from person to person through the air. And I'll tell you why it gave me a little shiver, and that's because one of the things that we know is shifting as we move forward into this year is that Saturn and Jupiter are both going to be meeting up in an air sign, Aquarius, for the first time in something like 240 years. We're beginning this air cycle. And so anything to do with air right now is going to catch my attention, as we've already had Saturn give us a foretaste of what's to come with his movement through Aquarius. And we don't have Jupiter near there yet, but maybe we're just sort of seeing the handwriting on the wall, if you will, because in astrology, nothing ever really happens on the day. So when we have Jupiter conjunct Saturn on December 21st, the winter solstice this year, I kind of know that it's not going to be something momentous that happens in that moment, that likely it's something that's built up prior to that conjunction. Then we have the conjunction, and then the conjunction wanes. But the energy that's put out into the social world or into our culture or into society at large stays in play then for the next 20 years, right? So the next 20-year pattern is in air, and actually a lot longer than that. The next conjunctions of Jupiter and Saturn will be in air signs, and those conjunctions happen every 20 years, very rhythmic. And for the last several sessions of Jupiter and Saturn in conjunction, they were in earth signs. So our focus was really on building and on money and the economy, especially because the last one 20 years ago was in Taurus. And now we're moving into Aquarius. So in my thoughts, it was, technology. There's a lot of potential for humanity's concerns to be more taken care of, but it's an air sign. So anything to do with air is also possible. So that gave me a little bit of an unnerving feeling. I'm not saying that it's a dangerous or a horrible thing to go into fear over, but it just caused me to sort of sit up and take notice. So while yesterday we spent, a good part of the morning talking about Piscean energy. So we know it's intuitive. We know it's imaginative. There's that creative energy that's there with it. It's expressive through creative energy. It's also very dreamy and sometimes causes us to feel more sleepy or confused or not see things clearly. So on one hand, even though we have the moon in Pisces today, it's not particularly a great day to make big decisions, but there's other energies going on today that might create tension, the tension for us to make some changes in our lives. So we're having, again, this kind of balancing act going on between where the moon is and what she's bringing us and what some of the other transits are that are out there. And there is a minor minor square, let's call it. It's called a sesquiquadrate. It is a 135-degree relationship between planets, and it's between Venus and Pluto today. So what we have is a full square, and then 45 more degrees, another half of a square, that brings us up possibilities of tension in our relationships, maybe tension in our finances, but all to all, it is sort of fear just beneath the surface that gets triggered by something. I saw it in myself this morning. Just that headline gave me such, not terror, but that fear, like, oh my gosh, what does that mean for all of us, right? Does that mean this is getting worse, not better? Those kinds of things that come up that cause us to lose our center a bit for the short term. So today, even though the tension is likely in relationships or your finances or in how you're expressing your values, note that that's all related to fear, right? There's a fear trigger there, maybe fear of losing something, losing money, or losing face in a relationship, losing the relationship, losing your life, all kinds of things that fear triggers within us. And it's different for everybody, right? Everybody has a different field of fear, especially as you see in your spleen in the human design template. You can see like what fears likely are going to be triggered in you that you're broadcasting. There's also, because Pluto is involved, of being able to plumb the depths of where is that fear coming from and what is it related to? What does it remind you of? Where was the first time in your life when you felt that kind of fear? And how did that start this rolling fear that you might be feeling in your life? Secrets, jealousy, possessiveness are all qualities of the darker qualities of Pluto when he comes together with Venus that we may be moving through in our relationships today. And as well, of course, we may see those kinds of things popping up in the outer world through news or television or anything, people in the outer world also in your lives expressing those kinds of fears or those kinds of triggers to what they're feeling in their lives. So that brings me then, let me take a real quick look and see if anybody's got questions around Pisces or any of that that we've just talked about. I've got oh, Valerie, good morning to you. Let's see, Amanda, J-Lo. Okay, so no questions. If you have questions, please feel free to type those into the chat. Something else has come to my attention about YouTube, and I'm playing with YouTube these days, it seems like, trying to get their formulas down. You know, it's like playing the game that Facebook always had, right? As soon as you think you got the game, they change the algorithm. Well, I also realized that I love it when you guys give me a thumbs up. So if you're liking the videos, please give me a thumbs up. Also, if you haven't yet subscribed, please feel free to subscribe. But also, did you know that comments, not like you're making here in the chat, but comments after we're done that are made underneath the video also count toward my channel's getting more notice. So if you guys could go in, look, I may put a question or something in under the video today. And I would love it if you guys would check under the video on YouTube and maybe answer my question, okay? Just let's do a little experiment and see if it jumps my numbers at all. And I love it that you guys are here. We feel like a community. So I feel pretty comfortable asking that of you. So after the show is done today, when it's done broadcasting, maybe wait an hour and I'll have posted a question and maybe you guys can go back and look at that for me, just because it is a way for us to get more notice through YouTube. Daily Spiritual Vlog says hello, a bit late, but hello. It's so good to see you all. Elisa, good morning. And if I missed anybody, it's not it's not on purpose. Things scroll by so fast, but good morning to everybody who's joining us now. And those of you who join me in podcasts through Blog Talk Radio later in the day, I would appreciate it if you too would go to Living Astrology on YouTube and interact with us underneath the video. Okay, so I want to transition over to the gate 53. Remember yesterday, we were talking about the sun at gate 53 and how it represents a new beginning. So just for the, pure fun of it, this morning I pulled out my Gene Keys book. I'm not sure anybody ever characterizes the Gene Keys as fun, but it is to me fun for the contemplation. So I pulled out the Gene Keys book, contemplation, right? Because you can't read this from cover to cover, and looked at the Gene Key 53. Now I don't carry the 53 activated in my chart at all. So it's not one that I'd gone to and really read through. In fact, I hadn't highlighted anything. And a lot of these pages in my book are just highlighted all over the place because I've really been working with that material. Well, guess what? 53 isn't one of them. So I thought we would delve into this together because its title is very engaging, Evolving Beyond Evolution. Wow. How do we evolve beyond evolution? Well, apparently it is a process of taking ourselves from the state of immaturity into the state of maturity or expanding into superabundance. And what does all that mean? Because I know from our thought processes here on the planet, and I did this as well, that my immediate thought was, well, money, love, things, possessions, right? All of these things sort of represent abundance. But it's more than that. And I find that really interesting. So he starts out talking about a new beginning. And what is a new beginning? Well, a new beginning has a question that comes along with it. And the question is, what is the true essence of this beginning? And I like those words, but I really kind of want to dumb it down a little, not because I think you're dumb, but because to me, I'm like, what is the true essence? Well, what does that really mean to me? Well, it means, what is my true purpose? What am I trying to accomplish here with this new beginning? What are my goals? Being completely transparent, what is the purpose, right? What is that purpose? Because the true essence, if it contains a seed of fear in it, right, can kind of poison the whole beginning, right? If you have this little poison dart at the beginning, then it infuses itself all the way through. And I was thinking back to things in my own life where I had, started something big. When let's see, this was back in 2003. I started a business called Mystic Moon. And, I live in this little rural town, a lot of rednecks. No disparaging there. They're absolutely wonderful people, but it's very, logger town. And I started a metaphysical bookstore called Mystic Moon in this particular town. And I was so excited, right? I just knew this was the thing I wanted to do. I loved books. I loved teaching. I love interacting with people. So having a metaphysical bookstore was like the pinnacle. But I remember the night before I signed the lease on the building, I had a dream. And in that dream, I had these four big owls. And I don't know if you guys have owls in your neighborhoods, but our owls can be small little ones, like in the deeper forest, but also the big barn owls that, I don't know, sometimes seem like they're 2 or 3 feet tall, and they fly across the road at night when your headlights hit them and they scare the heck out of you. Well, in my dream, these four owls came to me, and I was sitting on a street corner in the town that I was going to build the store in. And one by one, they came over to me. One walked over to me. One flew down out of a tree to me. Another one came from, like, I don't know where. And one by one, they stood in front of me, all four of them. And I looked at them in my dream. I'm sitting there kind of like this. And I look at them in my dream and I said, well, do you have a message for me? And all at once, all four of them started speaking in their screeching kind of owl speak. And I'm like, I can't understand you. I can't understand you. And I ended up waking up from that dream in a little bit of terror, because I was going to sign this lease on this building where my business would be. And it's starting out with this little frisson of fear and terror going through it. And I just knew those owls had something profound to tell me, but I just never got the message, right? I never got the message because I couldn't understand the message. And literally then that business right from the beginning was rocky. It was rocky. It was almost, it financially almost ruined me. And then it created a lot of havoc in relationships. And it was one thing after another, right? This disaster. And I can't help but feel the fact that I went ahead with that, even though there was this fear, could have infused the whole project with that kind of fear. And essentially that's what he's saying here with this particular gene key, is that new beginnings often hold the seeds of fear. So when we're setting intentions each month, or anytime we're setting intentions, if that's coming along with these seeds of fear, it is and then it can become bigger and bigger. It can really change the direction of your intention or create a problem. So I wanted to read this to you. And there's a couple of passages here I want to read. So again, I'm reading from the Gene Keys, words written by Richard Rudd. And it says, at the shadow frequency, fear is an inner yoke inextricably bound to human intention. And intention is like the arrow that you load into the bow of your actions. No matter how much work you put into something, if the arrow is bent, it will never quite hit the mark you were intending. In the context of this gene key, what we call immaturity is really nothing more than the human tendency to keep loading bent arrows into your bow. Because of this, no matter how well-meaning, your actions at a low frequency can only lead to further disharmony. Also, it says, it is a genetic reflex at the root of our whole civilization. Because of this fear reflex within us, we cannot comprehend the great laws of nature, the prime law being that of abundance. Okay, I'm getting a picture here. I'm getting a picture of this gene key's new beginning. And it felt a little odd to me that this gene key's fear shadow or fear field or shadow energy would be about immaturity. And then it goes to expansion, and then it goes to superabundance. And I was trying to figure out how does that all compute? Right. I was using my mind, which I tell you all the time to get out of your mind, get into your body. But that's what I was doing. And here we have another paragraph I would like to read for you to consider. As one of the 6 internal pressures forming the codon ring of seeking, the 53rd gene key is responsible for creating a great deal of stress at the shadow frequency. The stress it causes in our modern world is directly reflected in the desire to become materially rich. Great individual wealth is unsustainable unless you have a higher purpose that requires it. Keep in mind that there is a vast difference between prosperity and wealth. Wealth is a stockpiling of money based upon fear and greed, whereas prosperity is a flow that expands and contracts with universal rhythms. Prosperity adjusts itself automatically to the needs of your higher purpose. Wealth is in no way equivalent to fulfillment. In fact, it most commonly leads to the opposite. The essence of the ring of seeking is to lead you out of your immaturity by showing you the true nature of your desire, greed, and fear. Thus, we learn in time that the fulfillment we seek is within us rather than outside of us. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. I mean, I just have to sit with that for a little bit, because as I'm thinking about that, how many times do we see things out in our world about creating wealth generation, and all these things? And I know that it's great buzzwords, right? They're great words at getting people excited about pursuing wealth. And yet it has the seeds of fear in it, and it's coming from the fear that I'm not going to have enough, right? Or that I won't be honored in, that I need to make a lot of money in order to feel honored, valued, recognized, or heard in the world. And it's interesting just how pervasive that is, even in my own life, as I'm looking about what is my need for getting likes and all of that, right? So it's right. I've got to finish reading this. I decided to do this at like 10 minutes before I needed to get ready. So I didn't really have time to contemplate that. So I'm going to ask you to sort of join me in the contemplation. If you don't have the Gene Keys, you can, I believe, download it to Kindle so you can get it fairly inexpensively, or order the book and take a look at what the Gene Key 53 means. Now, for all of us who do not have that gene key naturally or natively, we suddenly have it because the sun is there this week. So it's there. No wonder it's coming up in my field here for us to talk about, because it's not there normally for me. And then when we take that gene key, the 53, and we join it up with the earth at gate 54, where we have ambition and drive, we can take that very powerful energy of drive and we can put it toward creating wealth that then creates an issue with our being abundant in the world. And I find these things so fascinating, don't you? The idea of that, the more we try to create wealth, the more we are really succumbing to the fear field. So we have to get some clarity around what are our intentions. So it goes back to, what is it you're trying to do? Right? Is it from the true essence? Is it about making money? And if so, let's be transparent and let's be honest about it. That way, the fear of not having that isn't there, or at least it's, you're aware of it. It's in your conscious realm. On the other hand, most of us begin things because we feel really good about doing it. I mean, I'm sure people out there start working or start doing particular things because it will bring them money. But I can tell you that when I started doing what I was doing, it wasn't about that. It was about raising the consciousness of the planet, of myself, right? It was about me wanting to raise my own consciousness and taking some brothers and sisters and some friends on that ride with me. And if I stay in that truth of that intention, that's different, because it acts then like a magnet to draw prosperity to me, to you, rather than thinking about it in terms of only wealth generation and the difference that feels like in the world. This is such a difficult concept for us, because so much of our conditioning is about money, going out and earning a living, right? And being able to, thrive. But thriving isn't about the money. And that's the part that just kind of blows me away. So let's see what people are saying here. Fear, false evidence appearing real. Absolutely, Deborah Johnson. That's so true. And the owls are not what they seem. Exactly, Destiny. Joshua, if we have undefined centers in our human design, are they defined when it's defined for the chart of the day? Yes. So let's say, Joshua, in your human design, you had the gate, let's see, 42 hanging. It should be on this, it would be on the sacral center, the red center, if you're a manifesting generator or generator. It would be hanging down. Now with the sun suddenly at the gate 53, that whole channel is turned on. And let's say you're a projector. Let's say that hangs on a projector's chart. Now suddenly you have generator energy because the 53 and the 42 join up, turning on both centers, both the sacral and the root center. And now you may feel like you have a lot of energy towards starting something new. And that's great. It's great, but it's temporary. So you still have to make sure that you're following your type and your strategy and your authority in starting something new, so that you're not throwing a lot of energy at something that really doesn't have any sustainability to it, because the sustainability is only short term. So it's so helpful to know your human design, to know, okay, is this just something that I'm in a momentary fog over, that I suddenly feel like, for all of us right now, that long-term transit of the Pluto, Jupiter at gate 61 and Uranus at gate 24, where it suddenly has us all with a defined head and a defined ajna. And what I keep hearing over and over from people is about needing to figure things out. And the more you say that, the more you're getting into your mind. And of course, that's part of the problem right now, because the mind's defined in everybody because of those transits. And I think it gives us the opportunity to really look at what's going on in our mind. You know, what are we thinking? What are our thoughts around projects or around people in our lives, around what we can do, around the state of the world economy, or, you know, whatever it is that you're thinking about? Because if you don't know what you're thinking about and your thoughts are creative, which we know they are, then what you're getting mixed results in what it is you're trying to create in the world. And instead, right now, we have this great opportunity to look at the magic of creation and being a co-creator, and looking at the world with awe and wonderment, kind of letting go of that rational mind that just wants to have everything categorized and understood. It's almost like, you know, science, as wonderful as I think science is, and I love science, its search is to uncover truth that often then undermines the magic in what's going on. So we have to still find the magic in science as well as the magic in not knowing, right? The magic is in knowing, but also, I mean, magic in not knowing. So there's this balance again, right, that we're having to work through, and not trying to rationalize everything that's happening or not happening, just to go with this flow and understand it's all a part of co-creation. So I hope that answers your question, Joshua. That was sort of the long way around. Destiny says, good questions. And if ours are defined for our natal charts, how does that play out? Is the energy fluid or restricted? None of the energy is restricted. Let's put it this way. When you have a defined center or a defined channel or a defined gate, that energy is consistent in you, right? It's consistent. It's a part of who you are. So wherever you see color in your chart, that is where you have consistent energy and you express that energy consistently. Wherever you have the white channels, white gates, or white centers, this is energy that is not defined, and therefore it is inconsistent. It plays out when there's planets transiting or when you're together with other people. And as soon as you're away from those people or that transit moves on, then you're going back to the initial state, which was not having it defined. So if you start where conditioning comes in is when we believe we're something we're not, right? Where, for example, our head definition right now has us all believing in the thoughts that are contained in our mind, being inspired to act from our thought processes. And of course, we know from human design that everything that we need to do from a position of authority is below the throat, right? Below the neck. That's where the real juicy energy is of truth for each of us. It's not up here. Up here, we have awareness and we have pressure. Down here, we have motors that actually allow us to take action on the right thing at the right time with the right people, in the right timing, divine right timing. So it doesn't necessarily change anything if you have it already defined. It just means you might become more aware of what it is you're broadcasting, right? But if you are someone who has it open, this is new energy to you, and it may be something more that you can do right now But if you mistake it for something that is always going to be a part of who you are, then you can find yourself in a state of mistaken motivation where you are assuming that you're going to have this continuous sacral energy. And if you're a projector and that moves on, then you've burned yourself out, right? Or you've worked too hard, or you're feeling disappointed in life, what have you, frustrated if you're a generator, angry if you're a manifester, bitter if you're a projector. Reflectors are disappointed. So it's really so important for you to know your human design, to know how these things are going to be affecting you. So I hope that helps for you to understand that better. And let's see what else. J-Lo. Duality and balance. I love that. Destiny, I see, makes sense. Thank you. I just also found out about the dwarf planet Eris, and I'm wondering if you can explain if it's not too off topic. No, it's not necessarily off topic because we have fairly light day today, so we can play around with things. Now, Eris is she's a character, let's say, and she takes on sort of some of the discordant energies in the universe. And she's sitting in the sign of Aries right now with Chiron and with the Black Moon Lilith. And we have a Mars transit now coming through the sign of Aries. So Black Moon Lilith, Chiron, and Eris are all going to be triggered at some point or another between now and the end of this particular year. So we might as well talk about what is it that she is representing. Well, there's a couple of themes that we could talk about with Eris. And, I just finished reading a book. Thank you, Ursula, for turning me on to this book about Eris. And there are several themes that seem to show up. For example, the author of the book goes through things like the women's movement. He looks at some of the authors of the day, back in the day, that were speaking to, being different in their societies than what society would want them to be like, and how there's this discord that's sort of brought up this, what do I want to call it? Sort of this Xena warrior woman energy that Eris brings to the table. And wherever she is in your chart by birth is sort of where you are being asked to kind of shake things loose, to be the warrior for something, maybe a spiritual warrior for something. In my own chart, she sits just before my 10th house. So she's very empowered because she's close to the midheaven. She's on the 9th house side of the midheaven. So what am I always talking about? Abundance. And I'm talking about growth and expansion. And one of my favorite planets to talk about is Jupiter, as well as the moon. And Eris kind of embodies the things that those planets can bring to us that cause us to change, to expand, and to grow. So wherever Eris is in your chart is sort of where you're going to see that you become a spiritual warrior of sorts, where you are looking at things in different ways than the people around you. Now, in mythology, she was the one who brought the golden apple to a wedding that she wasn't invited to. So another theme seems to be being excluded instead of being inclusive. These people did not want her at the wedding because she's a disruptor and she's discordant. So they sort of kept her out of the game. When she found out about that, she was fuming. And so she throws out the golden apple. And I believe at that point, it's sort of the beginning of the war, the Trojan War. And so we know how all of that went down. That was a pretty nasty war. And we end up seeing how when we exclude people, that vengeance and retribution and revenge become a part of the picture of who we are. So it makes me think of, like, right now, Eris may be triggering the Black Lives Matter. And, people who've been marginalized by society or by our culture here, or been, felt like they weren't as good as other people for no good reason, I might add. That marginalization then creates a pattern of that discord and trying to right that ship, right? Trying to bring it back into an inclusiveness. But also in our own personal selves, where have we felt excluded? Where do we need to be more inclusive? maybe including our own selves when we are factory and nurturing or something like that? Or where have we felt like we've been held back by other people in our lives? Because it's also going on with us as individuals. It's not just happening to African Americans that they've been marginalized. That's just another symptom of where we have all become very good at marginalizing, of determining what's inclusive and what's not, right? What do we want to exclude versus what do we want to include? So again, it goes back to that shadow of duality where we're not seeing things clearly, right? We see things in terms of us and them instead of we, right? So we're learning the we of it all. And in the process, there is Eris who upends everything during that process. So that's sort of a longer explanation. And it's also personal in your chart somewhere. But on the bigger stage, it is in the process, she is in the process of really creating a warrior, a spiritual warrior situation that we need to work through. Allison says, what do the downward, upward arrows and stars mean in the chart graphs? You know, that is sort of related to the concept in astrology of exaltation and fall. So where you see an up arrow, that's where it's, they used to do this. Most new programs don't have that anymore, but it used to be that if a planet was in a gate that was attributed to a sign that it was in exaltation with, you would see an up arrow or the star. And if it was in a down era, it was arrow, gosh, I can't talk. Then it would have been in its debilitation, or it would have been in its fall. So, or detriment, or its fall. So it's kind of related to astrology. Pretty much though, most human design people don't use those arrows anymore. Looking at that, it just might mean things are more challenging if it's down and a little easier if it's up. Go figure, right? Destiny makes sense. Thank you. Oh, I already read that one. And then J-Lo, my kids do not like the balance part because they believe I should side with them. But I tell them you have to be honest in all, no matter what or who the person is. I love you, but if you are wrong, ooh, slippery slope, J-Lo, that's difficult because it's who are you to tell them they're wrong, right? That's the first thing that comes to my mind. And they may be, you know, reaction to that same thing. Who are you to tell me that I'm wrong? Instead, it might be more, and I don't know if this is, if you're talking moral terms about what things people do to one another. But that's a slippery one. You got to be real careful with that one, J-Lo, because people may react badly to that, thinking, you know, you think you're so good and you think you're better than us. So watch that one in your life. Ursula, an idea popped in: the evolution of Mystic Moon bookstore to Selena White Moon Blessings online store. Ooh, cool. Except I really, I don't know what I feel. You know, that experience, Ursula, was like the top most exciting experience in my life. I can tell you that I would work from 9 a.m. in the morning until sometimes 10 or 11 o'clock at night, because we would have events or we'd be hosting, you know, some kind of circle or study group or something like that. And, you know, I was in my younger 40s, late 30s, early 40s. And I had all the energy in the world to do this. It was my passion. I loved it. But then a bunch of other crappy stuff started happening. Egos got in the way, and it became kind of that albatross around my neck. So finally, by 2008, I let go of that, and became much more, you know, involved with astrology and doing my own thing. And of course, that would be more true to my North Node than trying to keep working with groups of people. So it was an interesting lesson, and it was very much fun, and I loved it. But the ending of it wasn't quite so beautiful. I learned a lot, went into depression for a little bit of time there as I felt like I had been hit by a Mack truck. And yeah, it was ugly, but I learned a lot. How's that? Destiny, OMG, this resonates so much. I have Eris in Aries in the 10th. Wow, wow, wow. There you have it. Right? Everybody right now has Eris transiting through Aries, and I do believe almost everybody on the planet has it in Aries when they were born, because it's so far out there. She takes like 557 years, something like that, to go completely one time around the sun. So she, in her orbit, is there longer than Pluto is. So the fact that we, don't live that long means that for a lot of us, we are all born with it in the same sign. And I think that was because she moved into Aries in 1927, maybe. Oh, anyway, long time. We all have her in Aries. So it's the house placement more than the sign that is going to give you the idea of where it is happening in your life. So if it's in your 10th house, it's about your career, your profession, your authority, how you're showing up in the outer world, how well you've anchored the roots in your 4th house, how well you've built the foundation so that you can thrive through the branching of the various opportunities that come up in your life. And there may be times you have to do some trimming of those branches. Maybe the tree's gotten too bushy, too heavy in its leaves and its branches, and you might need to trim some things up. And Eris will show you through a big windstorm toppling that tree where that might have happened in your life. So think of it that way. J-Lo, I have a book from Laura Walker about Eris. I've not read it yet. This is interesting. I have that book. She mostly goes through the mythology of Eris in there. But, she's new in our pantheon of archetypes. So we don't know everything about her. So she's really worth studying in your own life to look at, what transits to Eris may be doing for you, to you, where you choose to be a warrior, or you respond badly back towards something that has triggered you. It can be really very interesting. Joshua says, I think it's okay if it's your kids, though. If we're talking things about right and wrong, yes. But the problem is, and I'm not going to pick on you here, JLo, but I do know you have the gate 17 defined in your chart. And all of us right now have Mars sitting at the gate 17. And that generates a lot of opinions. And opinions are a dime a dozen. And they are not meant to be shared unless you are invited to share them. And so if you do that, you are often inviting blowback from the other person. You may be absolutely right in what you're trying to teach your kids or what you're trying to say. But you also need to wait to say those things, unless it's something dangerous, right? Somebody crossing the street in front of a bus, that would be, not an opinion. That's a fact, right? You're in danger. But the opinion part of that is where we can sometimes go off the rails, right? Where we just believe that we're so right. We're so invested in our opinions that we want to share that opinion with everyone, but not everyone wants to hear your opinion, right? So we wait and we ask before we enter into that conversation, sharing an opinion, we ask first. Now, if your kids are younger, that's a different story, maybe. But you might start tracking this within your own selves. Every one of us right now, because Mars is at gate 17, have opinions. And so an invitation to share your opinion looks like this. If you're talking, and most of your kids are 18 or adult-ish or later teens, right, JLo? So it'd be, I experienced this when I was your age, and I really want to share something with you. Are you willing to listen to me? Easy deal. If they're not, then don't waste your breath, because all you're going to do is get frustrated yourself. If it's an issue around danger or, the moral rightness of doing things the right way, that's maybe different. So hopefully that helps. Jules de Lune, Eris in the 5th, about your creativity, love, and romance. Valerie, Eris in 9th, same as me. That's about how you expand, how you open up your mind, how you look at from a higher perspective. When I closed out Mystic Moon, there was a lot of subversive tactics that there was so much dark there, where people were trying to take the store away from me, that there was this group of people who were undermining everything I had done. And it was so ugly and it was so heartbreaking, because I'm, trying to keep everybody happy at that time. And, you know, my business partner was, you know, getting this group of people together. They tried to sue me. They lost, but they tried to sue me. So there was all of this ugliness that was going on through it all. And I'm getting to this point here for you, whoever said it was in the 9th house, Valerie, where I decided I needed to take the high road, that I wasn't going to double down and give back vengeance or, you know, be ugly. I was going to rise up, right? I was just going to rise up and take that moral high road, I guess is how I thought of it to myself, where I wasn't going to throw out ugly thoughts. I mean, I had many moments where I was upset or angry or crying or what have you, but I never did anything backstabbing toward any of those people through the whole time that this was going on, even though they were backstabbing me. Even so, somebody found my owner paper for my car. What do you call that? The pink slip for my car. I had brought some papers and it got caught up in there, and they were going to take it to the DMV and tell them that it was that I stole the car. And I mean, who thinks of doing things like that? It was just ridiculous, some of those things. And even that, I didn't go, you know, to the high, I kept that high road. I just was like, stay out of that. That 9th house, Eris, is where you're a spiritual warrior for maybe that high road, that, you know, coming from a different perspective. And I did during that time keep asking myself, what am I learning about? Why is this happening to me? You know, what do I need to see here that I'm not seeing? So that 9th house Eris can help you with that. Amanda J has the 12th house Eris, and that is about looking into the self-sabotaging behaviors that you might have. That might be looking at where you're holding your own self prisoner. You have to become a spiritual warrior for releasing yourself into the all that you are, right? Why would you choose Eris in the 12th house as a soul? Well, to release your light into the world, where maybe in other lifetimes, you know, your light being released into the world caused you to lose your life. Or maybe you got persecuted in some way. So now you're hesitant in this lifetime to let that out. This is your opportunity to take a look at all of that and release yourself. You hold the keys. So woohoo. My Allison says, my mother always used to say, do you want to know what I think when I had a problem? Ooh, that's perfect. You know what I think? Because then you give that person an opportunity to say, you know what, right now, I don't care what you think. Nothing personal, Mom, but talk to the hand, right? I don't want to hear it right now. And then you could always follow it up with, well, when you're ready, I'm here, right? That kind of thing. That way you don't end up feeling unheard or unvalued yourself, and the other person doesn't feel like you're preaching at them, kind of thing. So that's great. Thanks, Allison. Joshua, congrats, J-Lo. The job is never truly over. Trust me when I say that. I have 2 boys in their late 20s, 2 girls in their 30s, and I'm still mom. That's just the way it goes. Okay, Amy, I have Eris and Aries in the 8th. So whoa. That's all about sex, death, and rebirth, transformation, crossing into taboos, maybe shining a light in a dark corner for someone through your readings that you do, Amy, or through conversations that are outside of normal, maybe even helping people to transform their lives. Joshua, 2nd house Eris, the exact opposite. So you may have some things that upend your financial life. Your income may be up and down, maybe, or you are a spiritual warrior for creating abundance or sharing possessions or sharing resources. Maybe you're a great resource manager, and that's what you're here to work through, is anything to do with your possessions or your money, or how you value yourself. Your self-worth can also be something that you become a spiritual warrior for. Self-love, those kinds of things. Valerie, that's perfect. Thank you. Going through something similar. I wonder if they take my walking away as weakness, but I'm so done with the toxicity of the situation. You know, if they take your walking away as weakness, that's their issue, not yours. Don't make it yours, right? You are probably doing what you need to do. So be proud of yourself, because you're not going to necessarily get that from other people. Ursula says, did this happen during your Chiron return? All the turbulence and the wounding? No, not quite. It was actually at my Chiron return where I came out of that dark tunnel and again re-engaged in the world, which is so fascinating to me because for the end part of my 40s, I really hid. I was hiding. I didn't want. That's when I moved to Samish Island here, and my island home made it possible for me not to have to go to town and not to be able to leave. If my husband had the car, he was going to work. And so there was a long period of time where I just hid. I really went to my 12th house, sun and Mercury and hid, pulled into my Cancer crab shell there on my rising and hid for the longest time because I felt it was a time in my life where I felt very persecuted. It was so bad at times when I would hear sirens, I would think they were coming for me. Now, where does that freaking come from? Right? This wasn't a police issue. This was a business issue. But I felt so persecuted and so haunted by it that moving to the island here gave me the possibility of not having to hear sirens, right? Because we don't hear those out here very often. So it was crazy, Ursula. It wasn't until my 50th birthday, and that was June of 2011, when I suddenly went, oh, I can come back out. Someone invited me out to participate in a group of ladies doing some, spiritual work. And it was my re-emergence back into the world. So anyway, of course, she's right there in my second house stellium. Oh, Natasha, I understand for walking into the store at that time. Yeah, you were part of it, right? You were there. I was drawn to your light. It's worth staying with the light as we walk in life. Exactly. J-Lo, 11th house, Eris. Do you believe the degree also matters for each of us? I think it does, especially if that degree that Eris is at puts it close to another planet already in that place. So let's say you had an 11-degree Eris in Aries in the 11th house and your Venus was at 12 degrees Aries in that house. You might have some issues seeing your value clearly, being able to hold your own in the midst of a group. Because the 11th house is our friends and people that we associate with, or you may be the lightning rod that comes into a group that changes things up, who interjects her own sort of energy into it for good, usually, right? But you may have problems working through groups because of that, right? That may also cause you to want to withdraw and pull away. There you go. But Allison, wow, I like this question answer session. I love it. Me too. Josh and sirens scare me. Yeah. And isn't that weird? I mean, I guess the only thing I ever had as a reason for that is months after this happened, I found out I have grace everywhere in my life, I swear. There are people, little angels all along my path, and a little angel came to me and told me that, did you know this group of people had called the police and asked for you to be arrested because they said you were embezzling money? I said, how can you embezzle money from your own company? I mean, seriously, how does that, how can anybody call the police? Luckily, the police had told them it's a civil matter. And, if you don't like it, take her to court, which they did and they lost. So, I mean, all in all, it wasn't that I was doing anything wrong, but for the longest time, I felt like something I had done was wrong and that people were after me. It was terrible. It was a terrible experience in my life, being haunted. And I can tell you at that point in my life is the closest I ever came, and I would never really do this, but the closest I came to being depressed enough to want to leave the planet. But I kept persevering, right? I have this stubborn streak in me that just perseveres, and I just refuse to give in to that, even though I hid for, like I said, a long time. They couldn't take you down. You're a beautiful, magical being. Yeah. And I didn't want to take them down either. I really wished the best for all of them. I just wish they could have wished the best for me as well. Instead, they went down to an ugly place, and that was terrible. J-Lo, I become immune to sirens because I live 7 blocks from a hospital. And you're in, New York City. It's a big population. Joshua, I had a lot of bad people around me when I was younger, so I think it stems from that. Amanda says, some people can just get so unkind, and it always baffles and saddens me. Yep. Those haters. Amy, I hate that. My Eris wants all the names of the people who did this. My other thought about all of that during the time was, what goes around comes around. So I felt really like if I didn't want to repeat the same event in my life, that I likely should take that moral high ground to be not like I'm better than you, but just to stay above that, wanting to go into that dark place of stabbing people in the back. And guess what? It happened to me a second time in that business. The second time I tried to regrow the business, right after all of that was over, the lawsuit was done, the people were out of my life and away from me forever. The people that were left, I kind of connected up to two other women who together decided they were going to try to take the business away from me and have me kicked out of the business. I'm telling you, it was like the third or fourth owl screaming at me, "What are you doing?" And that's why eventually I just had to decide to close it, because there was that second incidence of someone who, another ugly thing where a little angel told me at the last minute what was going on, and I was able to take steps to protect myself and get out of there. So what was I learning from all of that? Well, maybe it was really about connecting to my North Node, right? Because all of that was happening in human design. Your North Node transitions right about age 40 to 42, right around your Uranus opposition. And because I have the 6-2 profile, it could be a little bit later for me. So between 45 and 48. And that's about when all of this stuff was happening. So my transition to the North Node would be pulling me toward being an individual, not and part of a group. So it's really interesting, right, to be able to see that in retrospect, because I certainly didn't see it at the time that that was happening, or that was the truth, because I didn't even know human design. But that's the power of knowing your human design, because you can then take that and move with that in the right direction. So I think it was all right and perfect. And I kept, my personality, I'm very stubborn, very determined, and I'll endure through anything. So I might have kept going in that direction ad nauseum, trying to be in a group, trying to create that as a group effort, instead of being the singular voice. And here, doing what I'm doing now, I'm the singular voice. So interesting, right? That how you can watch your life morph when you're moving in the right direction. Then that's true, Joshua. No one can steal your light. No one can, but certainly you can put it under a bushel if you're feeling scared. And I think maybe that's the biggest lesson for all of us, is not to put yourself in a position of letting fear steal your light or hide your light. Yes, I say that. I believe all you do here will replay here sooner or later in their life, or their kids, grandkids, because all you do here has to be repaid here. Yeah, it's a karmic planet, right? Valerie, I always look for my lesson on these dark kinds of situations, not what they did, but what did I learn? And boy, did I learn a ton about myself. Once I was able to get some space and time, from now I look back and I can see exactly how my actions created that pathway. And I can be responsible for my part in all of that. I can take that victim energy back, and I don't have to be that victim. But at the time, that was so hard to do. And Joshua says, I'm in Uranus opposition now. So hooray, right? I call that your midlife redirect. So now you get to sort of redirect your energies toward what it is that's really important for you, Joshua. Not what the world thinks that Joshua should be doing, but what Joshua wants to be doing. It was at my Uranus return when I moved out of being a sales manager, optician, selling things, to metaphysics. It was a profound change. So maybe, this next few years, you'll see how your life has profoundly changed. And it's not always very comfortable, because sometimes we don't want to let go of the old. And Uranus takes no prisoners, right? It's like, let it go, liberate yourself, free yourself, move on. Anyway, and Josh says, I feel that too. Anyway, wow, this has been sort of fun. So let me just say before I leave, because we're after 9 o'clock now, that today's Pleiadian energy was about 5 evolving. And isn't it wonderful? This conversation, I think, is very evolving of all the things, right? The 5 is the energy, the opportunity to change, right? To change your path, adjust your intentions. So with the opportunity that the gate 53 gives us to really look at what is the reason, what is the true essence of our new beginning, of what it is we're beginning, and where does that take you? Now we have this ability to adjust our intentions. If we find that kernel of fear in there, we can make that adjustment because we have the power of choice in a day 5. It's all about being flexible and adaptable and promoting thriving instead of that mere surviving. And then evolving energy was Kaban in the Mayan calendar, which is about boundaries and shifting those boundaries and changing those boundaries. And sometimes it's the earth shaking kinds of changes, the feelings of things falling apart. And literally could be earth shaking. You know, I wonder if we did a study, if we'd find more earthquakes happening on a Kaban day as opposed to any of the others, or an evolving day. But it's that destabilization that occurs in an earthquake or in a shattering event in your life that helps you see where change is desirable and indeed necessary in order to shore up the foundation, in order to bring something new into form. So it's got a purpose, right? So the change energy is very powerful today. We're evolving beyond evolution, but we're also sort of in a dreamy state because of the moon in Pisces. So it might be hard for us to really see clearly what things are meant to be doing or happening, but we can get there. We just have to follow our type and our strategy. All right. So again, if you are here with me today, liked the video, please thumbs up. Look for a question in about an hour after I can produce this down. I'll look for a question under the video. I'll even put that link up to the video in Facebook for you guys to follow it and make a answer that so we can see if comments affect this at all. It's kind of like a fun game. And take care, everybody. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow's Friday, so we are doing card readings tomorrow. So get prepared. We'll play with the Mayan ones. And I feel like the dragons want to come out. So we'll see what goes on tomorrow. Take care, everybody. Bye for now.